All right, so welcome to All Nine Row Mine Ball Talk. We're at episode 9 now, and we're talking swing plane. Maddie wanted to do a little offensive video, so we got a swing plane conversation coming in, and I know this is big right now in baseball, and everybody has their opinion, so I'm excited about this.
Yeah, it's been one of those topics where I think over the past 4 years or so, like my brain has really developed around this topic of swing plane and has really changed because growing up, I was always taught swing down at the ball. You want to really hit the top inside half, which, I think people have that as like their thought process, but that's not what they're really doing. It's a thought process to help them, but they're not really trying to hit the top inside half of the baseball. But for me, I was like, okay, let's like try to really hit this thing and swing down at it. And, it I don't know if it ever really made sense, but everybody was talking about it. So it was like, this is how you hit. This is what you do.
Yeah.
Never really questioned it. And then I think the first time I heard something that was like, that doesn't sound right, was Josh Donaldson was talking about how if he goes 0 for 3 with 3 flyouts to deep left in a game, that's a great game for him. And I'm like, it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Like, that's 3 easy outs. How's that a great game?
It's easy to say that when you're making millions of dollars, right? Like, hey, I had a great game,
But, so over probably like maybe 8 months, I started thinking about it. And I was like, well, that actually makes a lot of sense because for him to hit a deep fly out, he's got to be on a pretty good path. His barrel's got to be getting through the zone. He's got to be doing the things that he wants to do to hit the ball hard. So in reality, yes, that is a good game because he accomplished what he was trying to do with his swing path. And so That's when I started to develop like this whole get on path really early and try to be on path for as long as you possibly can versus hands down to the ball and try to make contact right in front of your front hip and that be what we're trying to do.
Yeah. And it always, for me, when A-Rod came out and they did that video comparison of him, which a lot of people have seen now, where he's talking about it like he's swinging like that, and then they take a video of him actually swinging in a game, and it's not that.
Not even close.
But that's what he needs to tell himself. And if that's what you need, if you need to tell yourself to stand on one foot and that gets you the right swing, then tell yourself that, right? So in my mind, there's no perfect way to say something because you can say something one way to one kid and they do it right. And then you can say the same thing to another kid and they do it wrong. So really it's just trying to find a way to communicate and use the right verbiage for each individual player.
And I think what people need to realize too is a lot of these things that guys do is for feel versus what they're actually trying to do. Like you watch Bregman on deck and he takes this really awkward like on deck swing, but he doesn't swing like that in the game.
Right.
But there's some trigger that he's trying to feel on deck by doing that gets his path to be what he wants when he's up to bat.
Right.
And there's a huge difference between feel versus actual. And when people teach hitting, they gotta explain that this is what we're trying to feel happen, but this is actually what's really happening. So we don't get confused.
Right. And I think today there's a lot of talk. So in my experience in the game so far, there's the swing down people and the swing up people, right? And usually the swing down people are the older generation, chop down on that ball, get your hands out in front type of stuff. But what I've noticed is once you slow the swing down on video, it's a little bit of both. And
yes, absolutely.
you hear that term Nike swoosh, right? Where you get the bat coming down and then it comes through and then it comes back up slightly on an upward plane. And essentially you're swinging down and you're swinging up. You're just going down to up.
Right. Yeah, you want to what makes sense to me is the pitch is coming at an angle down like this because the pitch is thrown off of the mound, right? So it's coming down. So you want to create a similar angle going back up. And that's where that Nike swoosh comes into play. And, you can talk about how you teach creating that. And I want to talk about kind of what my thoughts are on how to get there. Do you want to start on that or you want me to start?
Yeah, well, you mentioned something early on, like right at the very beginning. You were saying to get on plane early. So like you said, we're trying to match that plane of the pitch, which is fairly flat, but it's always angled down because there's no way for a ball to really go up.
Right.
So what we're trying to do is get on plane with that as early as possible right here. And
Yep.
then it's just a slight upward swing to match that plane. Like you said, you were given that visual right here. And I feel the same exact way. You want to get on plane with it, but there's a very fine line between getting too much of an upward angle and then you hit the top of the ball and you're getting top spin, ground ball outs, and then you can get too flat and you can be popping balls up and fouling balls back. So you're trying to find that perfect in between. And it's very, very hard to get a round bat and a round ball to hit perfectly square.
Yes. And for me, I think your first movement to the ball is the most important part of the movement. Like once you load and you get this angle with the bat behind your head, if I lose that angle early, my barrel is going to be all over the place. If I can hold that angle and keep that angle coming forward through the zone as my back elbow drives in towards my hip, if I can get connected with elbow and hip and barrel moving forward before I lose that angle, then I got a really, really good chance of getting on path of that ball and continuing on a straight path. So for me, I always teach guys, try to load, get that angle, and use your right elbow, or for a lefty, use your left elbow to drive that elbow in so your hands don't move. And now you're getting into a strong position. So as you get out front, you can really extend through the baseball. But if you lose that angle early and start to extend your hands back, or you do this, or you do something like that, it's very, very hard for your barrel to stay on that Nike swoosh path that you were talking about.
Right. And one of the terms that I like to use, I want to preface real quick, I'm still waiting for us to disagree on stuff. And when we don't prep before these. We just go on and we don't talk to each other about any of this. I teach the same exact stuff. When I'm talking about getting on plane and my first movement being the most important, because once you start yourself onto a path, it's very, very difficult to change that path or that plane in the middle of a swing. Once you're started, you're going, you're launching, and it happens so fast, you're not going to make an adjustment mid-swing. But what you do see is that when people are a little too flat and then they try and come to something that's inside where they need to be a little more inverted, the term I use is invert your barrel. So, I mean, if this is my barrel, this is a vertical barrel, and this is an inverted barrel, and I want to have that barrel more up and down if it's going to be an inside pitch. Because if you try and get to an inside pitch and you're too flat and your first movement was flat and out, then you're going to cut yourself off and pull your hands through and do that chicken wing.
Yep. And, you know, I always tell a lot of my clients too, like, our brain is so conditioned to try to get the barrel on the ball that if I get off path early, my brain's going to make my hands do whatever it can to get that barrel to the ball. So a lot of times that's pull hands across.
Yeah.
And now I'm rolling over to the shortstop, whereas it probably would have been better to get jammed a little bit and stay on that path and hit through it, to where now I can get jammed and maybe hit that ball over the shortstop's head. And now, no, I didn't barrel it up, but I got a single because I fought through the baseball and was able to get through it with power, and instead of pulling the hands across. So if we can get on path early, then the brain's like, well, great, bat's going towards the ball, everything feels nice and free, barrel goes through, and that's when you're like, wow, I didn't even feel that ball come off my bat. It's like that home run you hit, and you're like, wow, I don't even know what happened. I like blacked out.
Right. And that flare, that fillet to the opposite field is better. It's a better miss than yanking a ball foul at 110. Like, congratulations, you squared the ball up and you just pulled it over the dugout, strike two, right?
Right. And I don't think there's anybody in the big leagues who's ever hit over 300 who doesn't get a ton of those flares, because their bat pass stays so good. They don't cheat. They don't pull their hands in too far. They stay true to their path. And when they get beat by it, they're still able to hit enough of it to get a base hit. Whereas the guys who, you know, hit like 240 to 250 probably are making a little bit slighter adjustments mid-swing to get barrel to it, and they roll over.
There's nothing wrong with hitting 240 to 250, okay?
No, I'm just saying there, but there's a big difference between 240 and 300.
There is.
And
there's a longer career when you're hitting 300 too.
Well, for example, like I remember last year, Brandon Crawford at the end of the year was talking about how he spent the whole entire offseason working on getting his barrel on path a lot earlier. And I just looked up his stats. Last year was the first year he almost hit 300. He had like 298. Before that, like everything was like 246, 256. Like he was always around that 250 mark. And last year he hit 24 home runs. So power numbers went way up. Plus his average went way up because he worked on getting that barrel in that zone way earlier. And now he's able to hit through the ball better. He's able to be a little bit late and still drive the ball opposite field. He's able to be early and drive the ball pull side. If he's on time, he crushes it. So it's a huge win-win from a timing standpoint too. If your timing's a little bit off with that downhill swing, you're missing the ball. If your timing's a little bit off with your bat on path early, you can be late and still hit a missile opposite field or even a home run. I mean, a lot of guys hit slightly hit home runs to right field because they're on path so early. And they, you got to have some power to do that, but it's possible.
Yeah. And you talked about getting beat the right way versus trying to make that mid-swing adjustment to get the barrel to it, pull it foul type of thing. Where I always go back to Derek Jeter. The guy's swing looked funky sometimes. And he would just stay on his swing plane, just stay on his path. And he didn't deviate from it because he knew if he gets beat back here, then he's going to hit that little flare over to right or that dribbler through the infield or whatever. But he didn't change from it. Once he set that bat on that plane, it was just going through. And now your body's really just in the way. Your arms are just in the way. Yeah. Once you get it going and it's on its path and it's on its plane, let it go. Let it continue. At any time that we start to start our swing and then get tight or get strong with one hand, you lose that perfect pendulum swing that comes through, that Nike swoosh that comes through, because you get here and then you go and you roll it or you tighten up.
Yep.
And I fought that for my whole life, trying not to get too top hand heavy or strong or changing something in the middle of the swing. Set it on its path and let it fly.
Let it go. Another thing Josh Donaldson said is he tries to just let his barrel run into the ball. He's not trying to drive his barrel in the ball. He's just trying to get his bat on path, and he wants his barrel just to run into the ball. And that makes sense because if you're trying to get to run into the ball, you're not forcing anything. You're not pushing your hands at it, or you're not, like you're saying, over strong with your top hand. You're just letting that barrel whip forward. And if you make good contact, that thing goes a long, long ways. Right. And he's not an overly big guy. He's I don't know, he's 5'10", 5'11", maybe 200 pounds. I don't know, but he's not like Aaron Judge.
Right.
That dude's got some
he just knows. Well, look at Altuve. They figured out a way to optimize their movements, and they're not wasting any movements or changing anything in the middle of the swing. They're launching and they're letting it go. Right. They're just starting that swing and letting the bat do the work and getting their body out of the way. Yeah. And once you get something on plane, if you just leave it alone and let it swing through on its plane, on its pendulum, you have a much better chance of bat speed and exit velo. Then we get, launch angle could be a whole nother topic that we talk about, but these things are they're all based off of, you talked about hitting the top of the ball. I preach every single swing. I want you to hit the bottom half, bottom inside part of the ball. That's where you should be aiming.
Yeah. It's funny how that's changed. When I was in high school, I hit with Matt Williams one time, and that's what he told me. He's like, top half of the ball. He's like, all I try to do is hit top half of the ball. And I was like, well, heck, if Matt Williams is telling me top half of the ball, that must be it, because he was one of the best hitters on the D-backs at the time. And so I'm like, dude, this is the best advice I've ever got. Matt Williams is telling me top half of the ball. Here I go. Yeah.
It's along those lines of, he had to tell himself that because maybe he had a problem swinging up too much.
Right. And
so, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that, too, with this is people start to think, oh, well, if we're getting on path early and you're talking about launch angle, we must be talking about power numbers, and we must be trying to want to hit home runs. And yes and no. The harder you hit the ball, the better your chances are of getting a hit. So yes, I want to hit for more power, but power doesn't necessarily mean home runs. Power can be doubles in the gap. Power can be a hard hit line drive opposite field. It's only a single, but I hit that ball hard, and so I'm creating more power, which is increasing the batting average. So we're not just talking about how do we get on path to hit for more numbers with power, no more doubles, triples, and home runs, but just more exit velocity, which gives you a better chance of getting a hit.
I think we're probably on the same page with almost all of this when it comes to swing playing, because I haven't heard you say anything I disagree with. So I like that.
It's funny because I've literally completely changed my philosophies on hitting over the past probably 4 years. Like 4 years ago, I would have been like, hey, you remember that Ken Griffey Jr. tee that was slanted down that you had to hit off of? That's
Yep.
what we want that bat path to be like, and
Dude.
it made sense. Like you hit down on the ball and it puts this backspin on the ball and it makes it go. It's like, well, I better have some unbelievable timing because I'm going to have to hit that thing perfectly,
Right.
chop through it to get backspin to go.
Right. You got that pitch playing, the plane of the ball coming in, and now your swing is trying to get in there. And if your swing's too up, then you're just right here is all you can hit it. And if your swing's too down, then right here is the only place you can hit it, and then you're out.
Yep.
And I mean, even flat, even if you're perfectly flat coming through, you hit it right here, and then you're out. But if you can optimize getting on plane right here and then staying straight through it all the way, I mean, your contact zone goes from right there to like that big. And that goes from like a foot to 2 feet. And if your contact point can be 2 feet long, I mean, you're going to square up so many baseballs.
Well, and now you're not so worried about having great timing, which now is going to allow you to be a little bit more relaxed and probably see off-speed pitches a lot better too, because you're not like, oh my God, I got to have my foot down at the perfect time so my barrel can get out to that fastball.
Yeah.
You're not so worried about that anymore. So now, you're seeing off-speed pitches a lot better.
Right. And that's just pushing through that contact point and getting that extension, that Nike swoosh where you're short to it and then long through it.
Yep.
I mean, I probably say that 100 times every time I give a lesson. Short to it and long through it. Let me see that Nike swoosh. So.
Yep. Make a song out of it.
You don't want to hear me sing.
No.
All right. You got any other ones on this?
Not really. I'm just a huge fan of keeping this angle as long as you possibly can. Like as you start towards the baseball, do not break that angle with your bat and your hands coming to the ball. Once you get to contact, then yes, we got to accelerate through. But if you can keep that angle for a long time, that keeps you short to the ball. There's no way you can be long if you keep that angle. As soon as you lose it, the swing gets long.
And practice that first movement. Most important thing. You get that first movement right, where you're going exactly where you want to go with it, you're going to be in a good spot. Because once you make a wrong move, if your first move is wrong, then everything else is going to be wrong. So work on that first movement. Yeah,
get on a tee, have somebody with you, get to your loaded spot, hold that spot, and have that person that's with you at some point, they can wait 10 seconds, they can wait 2 seconds, have them say go. And as soon as they say go, you want to get that barrel to contact as fast as you can. And you'll see how quickly you can actually get there. If you get long, you're going to feel it.
Hey, your phone has this amazing thing where you can do slow motion video record, and you can video every swing you take and just break it down. I mean, Major League Baseball players live on video these days. You can watch every single swing you take. Why wouldn't you use it, right?
Yeah. And you got YouTube, video your swing, and then go type in Fernando Tatis Jr. or Mike Trout or Miguel Cabrera or Manny Ramirez, whoever you want, and put your swing side by side.
Yeah. Overlay.
You don't have to be exactly like them, but see if you see some similarities and see if your movements towards the baseball, like don't watch the load maybe, but watch your first movement towards the baseball and see if you guys have similarities, because that's where a lot of those guys are very, very similar. Their loads might be different, but that first movement is very, very similar.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks for joining us, guys. That was a good one. I love talking hitting stuff because we've done a ton of defense, but I like the hitting one right now. So If you guys got anything, like it, put some comments in. Let us know if there's something you guys want to talk about. Appreciate you guys joining us. Hall 9 Romine Ball Talk, episode 9, Swing Plane.
Swing plane, get it right.
First movement. Let's get it right.
Yep.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you next week.
See you guys.